Welcome to episode 1 of the Create a Better Course podcast. I'm your host, Mara Kasarik, and I'm so excited you're here listening. Starting a podcast isn't something I ever really thought I wanted to do in my business. It was never on my goals list. It was never like this big to-do that I needed to do to feel successful. But I do really love teaching and sharing the different things I've learned in my own business journey. And over the last year, I really started to feel this spark of inspiration. Plus, I literally had multiple people tell me that I should start a podcast. And it just kind of all fell into place that this was something I should be doing in my business and would make it a lot easier to share the things I'm learning and the things I'm struggling with and the things I'm working through. So I'm so excited you're here. Some of you might already know me either from being friends in real life or being online business friends where we only know each other virtual. And some of you might be brand new. If this is your first time ever meeting me, hi, I'm Mara. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, but after college and after getting married to my husband, Tim, we moved to Orlando, Florida. I currently live just outside of Tampa, Florida. We moved from Orlando to Tampa about a year ago now, and I run a business helping other entrepreneurs create and launch online courses and digital products. Today, I'm sharing my online business story. I'm really going back to the beginning of my entire career of having multiple corporate jobs, wanting to start my own business, and just continually feeling like I was failing at that goal. There were a lot of years where I just had a regular day job and I didn't have this glamorous business, and there was a lot of time where I thought it was never going to happen. I would have an idea, I would try to pursue it, and then it just kind of didn't go anywhere. So I want to talk through all the messy years of feeling that way, and then what finally worked and helped me get traction to the point where I was able to leave my full-time job in 2019 and work full-time in my business for myself, which I have over doubled my income. It's probably actually about triple the income I used to make at my day job, which is amazing and incredible. I'm also going to be sharing a lot of the practical action steps and advice around starting a business and leaving the traditional working world, because it's something I personally felt very stuck on for so many years. I knew I wanted to have my own business, but the path to getting there was really confusing. And if I can share anything that helps someone who hasn't started a business yet, or you're early on in your business, I would love to do that, because there can be a lot of struggle and frustrations along this journey. So to go way back to the beginning, I have a degree in advertising and English literature. I went to Drake University, which is in Des Moines, Iowa, right in the middle of the United States. And I also had a specialty in creative writing. At the time, I really wanted to be a writer. I thought I was going to go to college and become probably some sort of journalist. I loved writing. I loved being on school newspapers and other publications. I was very interested in writing a book someday or writing for companies. I was all about the writing. But as I was pursuing that literature degree and creative writing, it was told to me over and over again, hey, Mara, you need a stable career, and writing isn't necessarily a super stable career. So I added on advertising, so that way I had a double major with the idea that advertising and marketing is a lot safer. It's a lot easier to get a job in, and that kind of made my parents and my family happy that I was getting a degree in something more secure. Growing up, I was super interested in entrepreneurship and business things. I was constantly thinking of new business ideas and plans for different ways to make money. I was constantly babysitting and pet sitting and thinking of all of these different product ideas pretty early on. Even when I was in high school, I started learning and experimenting with things like Etsy and doing graphic design for people and designing websites for people. All of it was self-taught at this time, and I wasn't really charging anything for my services, but I just thought it was cool I could help people and maybe make a few dollars along the way. In college, that entrepreneurial pull really grew even more for me. And so on top of taking college classes in writing and advertising, I started a website design business on the side, and I took a couple classes at my college about WordPress website design, and I started doing more website design, graphic design to help pay for college because it was really expensive. I also did start an Etsy shop in college where I would design these funny, witty posters that you could put up on your wall. So I had a lot of side hustles in college to help me pay for college. But when I graduated college, this idea of continuing those side hustles and growing them wasn't really something I was exposed to because it was just so impressed upon me that you go to college, you get the safe, stable corporate job that has the 401k, and you stay there for 50 years. And so that's what happened when I graduated college, basically. I had all of these creative things going on, but I started interviewing for marketing jobs at really large corporations because those are the ones that seemed to be paying the best, and I thought that's what you did. And I ended up taking one of those really traditional jobs. So I worked in a corporate marketing department. It was downtown for a very large company, and it was just a very traditional corporate job. I had a 45-minute commute both ways. There was a 1-hour lunch break where everyone went out to lunch, and you paid $25 to go out to lunch and network, which at the time I hated. I wore these really cheesy pantsuits, the blazer, and then you've got this collared shirt underneath, and you've got the slacks that are very uncomfortable. That's what I wore every day. And I hated all of it, honestly. From the very beginning, the first few weeks of the job, absolutely hated it. I liked what I did in my job. I liked the actual marketing, deciding how we were going to sell more of a certain product. I did not like everything else involved around how many meetings I had to go to, how much of my day I was just chained to a desk. It just didn't make me happy at all. So I made a deal with myself that I was going to leave this corporate job in a year. I figured that was the shortest amount of time that you could work at a job and move on without it being a red flag for other employers. But I made a promise to myself pretty early on of, hey, I'm going to work at this corporate job for a year. And after a year, I give myself permission to quit and pursue something else, which I came from a family where you stay at your job. You don't switch around and change jobs, which I think nowadays is less of a thing, but this was over 10 years ago that all of this was happening. And so the idea of leaving a job after a year was very crazy, but that is what I did. I worked there for a year, and during that time, I continued some of those side hustle things because that made me a lot happier. I found that a lot more interesting. I was designing websites for clients. I still was doing a bit of graphic design on the side, and then I had this corporate day job, which made me really unhappy. But after a year, I quit. My parents were like, "What are you doing? This is insane and wild." And during this same time, I got married to my husband, Tim, and we moved across the country to Florida, where I got a different job, which was also in corporate marketing, basically, but it was working for a magazine, which was way more interesting to me. My previous corporate job was very, very corporate, boring, dull. So this new job was a lot more interesting. I worked for a children's magazine that created educational magazines for children. And I worked in the marketing department where we would work on email campaigns and Facebook ad campaigns, which Facebook ads were so much different. This was in 2013, so much different than they were back then. And I enjoyed that job a lot more than my previous corporate job. It was still very corporate-y. Fortunately, a lot of it was work from home, so I didn't have to wear the pantsuits. I didn't have to go into the office a ton, but it still was a lot of corporate politics and dynamics. And what also started to happen was I was working all the time, which is a really common theme of my career, as you're about to find out, where I would have these jobs and I was constantly staying late at the office, going in early, working on weekends, which might sound weird in a marketing department, but it's actually pretty common in my experience because you're always working on these marketing campaigns. You're always trying to push out this next initiative, and it's not always very organized. And so a lot of stuff falls on a few specific people. So that's something that started early on in my career of working really long hours and probably working too long of hours, to be honest. So fast forward a bit, I'm still working at the magazine. I was promoted and I was in charge of their email marketing department, which I found very fascinating and interesting. And then that magazine was sold to another really large magazine company in the United States. And the magazine is still doing very well today, but at this time, they went through this really weird transition phase where they could not pay their employees for several months. So I held on for a couple of months, and the third month I had to tell them, hey, I have to go find another job. I need the money. And I did eventually end up getting everything that was owed to me. They were able to pay it. They just were late on it, but I did end up leaving because it became a really inconsistent paycheck. So we're on to job number 3. This is still in my early 20s, by the way. And again, I took another marketing job at a company in Orlando, Florida. This one was not a magazine, but it was a much smaller company. I actually was the entire marketing department of this company, and I loved that. I really, really loved that because it let me have less meetings. I only could meet with the owner of the company and her assistants. Other than that, there was no one else in the marketing department, so I didn't need to meet with them. I had a lot of freedom and flexibility over my schedule, which was huge. I, for a while, went to working 4 days a week where I would do 4 10-hour days, and then I would have a 3-day weekend, which was amazing. And I was able to kind of flex my schedule around where I could put those days back to back and have 6 days off. And that was really helpful for me. It was also in a field that was very interesting for me and exciting. And so I stayed there for almost 4 years. And during that time, most of that time period, it was a really great job. Now, the entire time, though, I'm still feeling this, okay, this job is all right. I have a lot more freedom and flexibility, but I still really want to own my own business. I didn't know exactly what that looked like, though, during this time. And I did a few courses and exercises where you vision your dream life and you write out a business plan. And I always just got stuck on, okay, I can make the vision and I can kind of create this business plan, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I never really had any traction on any of that. And it was really frustrating because I felt like year after year went by and I wanted to have my own thing. I just really didn't want to have to answer to someone else and work around someone's schedule. And even when you have a job that's more flexible, you're still constantly working around someone else's schedule and someone else's goals and someone else's dreams. And that's just not what I wanted at the end of the day. During the 3rd and 4th year at my company, so year 1 and year 2 of this job were amazing. There was also this crazy amount of growth where when I started, this company was making about $500,000 a year. And during year 3 and 4, they were making about $2 million a year. So the position and the company had grown immensely, but they hadn't hired any additional marketing support. So what happened in year 3 and year 4 is I became really overworked and burnt out. And I started to fall into this pattern of I was working all the time because it was constantly this pressure of as a company, we need to make more and more money. And it became increasingly more difficult to ever take time off. I was told I could no longer do those 4 10-hour days that I loved doing, so I had to go back to a more traditional work schedule. And I also started getting called in on the weekends. I started staying really late all the time. I started getting text messages and phone calls at like 10 o'clock at night about things. And it really started to wear on me. There also was a very specific conversation with my boss where she basically told me, where you're at is the only place you can go in the company. There might be a few raises, a couple $1,000s over the next several years, but there's not going to be a big increase in income ever. We're probably not going to expand the marketing department. So I kind of realized I was stuck there. I wasn't going to make more money, and I was going to continue to have more and more responsibilities, which I'm really grateful for this job because I learned a ton during this time period, but I just hit this wall of this wasn't the place I was supposed to be. So I started researching and figuring out what was going to be next. And I actually ended up taking a 4th marketing job because that's what I had done. I'm going to take this safe, stable corporate job. And the 4th job was a very corporate, safe, stable job with a very large company. And as soon as I started it, it just wasn't it. I just knew this is not what I want out of life. And so I started looking to pursue something different. And I was still interested in starting a business during this time. I still had a handful of freelance clients. I really didn't treat those as a business, which is really weird looking back on it, but I treated it as a hobby. And that's something I wish I had done a lot sooner, is charged more and really ran it like a business instead of just helping out friends, which is not what I was doing. So I took this 4th job, but I was only there for 6 months. And what ended up happening during that time is I transitioned to teaching. I became a middle school English teacher, which is a huge pivot. People thought it was crazy when I announced and said, hey, I'm going to go into teaching after I did this corporate career. But for me, I wanted something that was a lot more satisfying and something that I could feel like I was truly helping other people. And you don't always feel that way in marketing. A lot of the times you feel like it's just about the money, you're pushing products on people. I don't really love the way that feels. Education is also something I've been super interested in forever. I was originally going to go to college to become a teacher. And then I never did that because everyone told me, you won't make any money. So I decided to go for it. I said, okay, I'm going to give teaching a try. It checks a lot of the boxes of what I want. And when I looked back at past roles of what had I really enjoyed, a lot of it was the education and teaching initiative. And I really enjoyed my time working for that educational magazine where we were doing marketing and advertising, but we were also building curriculums and we were making sure that people learned things. That was really rewarding for me. So I became a middle school English teacher, which I was able to do because I already had a degree in English literature. And in Florida, you can transition to becoming a teacher if you have a degree in a relevant field. Most people probably don't want to do that, but it is an option. And I started teaching. And yes, it was hard, it was challenging, but I loved it. Like, absolutely loved it. And I started to create this whole alternative life plan where I was going to get my master's degree in teaching and I was going to start teaching additional and different classes. And I really found it super rewarding being with my students, interacting, coming up with the curriculum. I taught 7th grade, by the way, which a lot of people think is crazy. I really enjoyed teaching 7th graders and middle school in general because it's an age where the kids are super fun, they're super weird, but they still want to learn, and you can do a lot of fun things to engage and help them learn. So I absolutely loved it. But, and of course you're probably like, yes, there has to be a but because you aren't a teacher now currently, Mara. I still felt this pull of I want to start a business. And specifically, my husband and I were on a trip and we were flying back home to Orlando, Florida. And I just had this huge feeling of, I want to pursue the business stuff too. And I don't want to live this life where I never really give it a proper try. And so on that flight, I decided I'm going to pursue my business goals. I'm going to see where it takes me. I will still teach. And I didn't have any plans actually of quitting teaching anytime soon, but I became a lot more serious about my business. Prior to this, I was constantly thinking I had to outline the perfect business plan with the perfect services. I stopped all of that. And instead, I just started looking for opportunities where people wanted help with things I kind of knew about. So I had a ton of experience in email marketing from my time at working in different marketing departments where email was a huge thing I did. I also had a ton of experience in like graphic design and website design. So I started just looking on Facebook for people who needed help. And when they said, hey, I'm looking for someone to help me send emails or help me with my website, I started to pitch myself and I started gaining this network of clients. And so that's my biggest advice is give yourself permission to not have the perfect plan. And at this time, it was really scary because everyone says you need a niche, you need a website, you need super specific business offerings. And I didn't do any of that. And that's when I finally really felt traction in my business. What I did instead was I started saying yes to things. And I said yes to so many things and helped people in so many different ways. And so I'm gaining more and more clients. I'm learning more about having clients and running a successful business. And then I'm also teaching 7th grade middle school. And my income in my business really started to grow to the point where at the end of the teaching year that I was in, I had to make a decision. I couldn't do both. They both were taking up too much time. Teaching takes up a ton of time. And yes, you have summers off and you have Christmas breaks off, but you still end up working late and you end up working weekends and you have to go to curriculum development workshops over the summer. So it takes a ton of time. And so does growing your own business. So the school year ended and I didn't know if I was going to come back, honestly. And so over the summer, I had a couple of months off from teaching and I just really hit my business even harder. And what ended up happening was I replaced my day job salary with my business income. And at that point, the answer was pretty clear to me of go for the business. I figured teaching would always be there for me. If I wanted to come back, I could do that. But having this business maybe wasn't always going to be there. And so I took the leap. This was in the summer of 2019, and I quit my teaching job and went full-time all in on my business, which a lot of people portray as like this super exciting moment. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. Before I went and talked to my principal about leaving, I was so scared because I just felt like I'm probably making a mistake. This is crazy. This is so risky. But I did it. I ripped off the Band-Aid. I quit my job. And honestly, my business has been great ever since. And there's a lot of ups and downs that have happened over the last 4 years. But I have never gone back to teaching. I have always made more money than I made at teaching. And I'm so glad that I took that leap. It was not an easy decision to make. I really enjoyed teaching, and especially that first year when I went in my business full time, I really missed being in the classroom. I still miss being in the classroom. That's part of one of the reasons I'm starting a podcast, because I miss teaching and interacting and sharing with others. But I am so grateful for this business that I have grown and what it has given me. In 2019, I went full-time in my business, and I've been full-time ever since. And I now make about 2.5, almost 3 as of last year, 3 times the amount of money I made as a teacher in my own business. And that didn't all happen from the beginning. Early on, the first 6 months, I made about the same that I made as a teacher, but then things started to pick up and grow. I started to get more clients. I started to have people refer me, and my business has grown more and more from there. Originally in my business, I was doing a lot of different marketing tasks, and I have a few episodes coming up planned about how my business has shifted and changed over time, because now I pretty much only do online courses and digital products for people, which looking back makes so much sense. But when I very first started my business, I was doing all sorts of tasks. I was setting up online courses for people. I was helping with email marketing. I was helping with website design. I actually thought for a long time I was going to niche down and become a website designer. And what ended up happening was I started to get more and more clients who had an online course, or they wanted to launch an online course, and they needed help figuring out what do we put in it, how to record the lessons, how do we manage all of the students once the course is launched. I started to get a lot of people like that, and I started to get a lot of feedback of, hey, you're really good at figuring out how to create a curriculum and how to put it all together in a course, which was something that had a huge hole in the online business world, at least from my perspective. Of most people who are an online business and they're creating a course, so maybe it's a photographer and they're creating a course about how to do a brand photo shoot with a client, or it's a food blogger and they're creating a course about how to get more brand deals. They have a lot of insight on how to do those things, but they don't always know, how do I share that information with others in a helpful way that'll actually help others? So that's kind of where I bridged the gap. And over the last 4 years, my business has completely grown into online courses and digital products, which has been amazing and makes so much sense looking back, because looking back at my entire career, all the way from college, I was super interested in education. I was super interested in technology and online learning. I loved my time working for that educational magazine, and I loved my time teaching. So it makes a lot of sense now that basically I help people be teachers online. But it did take a while to evolve that. This story there was about 6 years of corporate work in there, and then I've had about 4 years of full-time in my business. So we're talking about a decade of working and learning and trying different things and trying to figure out what worked. And eventually a lot of it did work. And I hope to share more on future podcast episodes about making money in your business, how I've grown my business, and there's going to be a lot about online courses and online education, because it's something I really love talking about and teaching about. So you can definitely expect a lot of that from future podcast episodes. And I also want to talk about what having my own business has given me. I mentioned a lot about money and finances, that it's allowed me to grow my income. But there's a lot of other things as well. We were able to change my husband's working schedule and position, so that way he had a lot more flexibility and freedom, and he didn't have to have a traditional day job either. And that happened because my business grew, and we were able to make that decision of giving ourselves both a lot of freedom and flexibility. So he now has a very flexible schedule and actually does not work as much as I do, which is kind of cool and awesome. We also have been able to travel more. We work from home together, which not everyone probably likes. Whenever I tell people that both my husband and I work from home during the day, they always ask how we don't drive each other crazy. And we enjoy it, and I really enjoy that we're able to have that freedom to go do random things during the day or just focus and work, but it's probably not something for everyone. I've also just felt a lot of career satisfaction that I never felt when I had a corporate job. At my corporate job, I was always chasing the next income level. I was always chasing the next promotion. And it started to get really unfulfilling. And running my own business that looks so different. I still care about money. I always have income goals. But there's so many other areas of my life that feel more fulfilled to me, of learning new things, of helping people. Like when I help clients one-on-one, it's so much more rewarding because I literally see the direct impact it has on their own life and their own income. If we launch a course and they're able to then stay home with their kid or quit their full-time job, or there's so many amazing things that I've seen over the last several years. That feels so amazing, and I'm just so grateful for that. So that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope this helped in some way. I'm so excited to share more about online courses and digital products and passive income in general. And then I'll also be sharing a lot about my online business journey because I have learned a lot through running a business full-time, and now I am over the six-figure mark. But I definitely want to share more about what it took to get there, some of the bumps along the ways, and other advice. Well, you made it to the end of the episode, and I am so happy and grateful that you're still here. If any part of this episode was helpful and helped you with your online course or your own business, then you want to hit that subscribe button so that way you know every single week when I release a new episode, there is a brand new one that comes out every single week. I loved spending this time together, and I will see you on the next episode.